I don't want your ugly face's child. I have a better option. Harper's voice cut through the crowded rooftop party like a knife through butter, her words carrying over the Seattle skyline backdrop and landing squarely in my gut. The laughter that followed, led by that smug bastard Desmond Rake, echoed in my ears as I stood there, craft beer growing warm in my hand, watching my wife of 8 years perform for her audience of wellness industry parasites. I guess I missed the punchline, but don't worry, babe. The joke's on you. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name's Roland Kellman, and I'm apparently the ugly husband in this little comedy show. 36 years old, landscape architect, built my business from the ground up with calloused hands and a stubborn streak. I used to box in college, still hit the gym with my buddy Sam 3 times a week. Not exactly Brad Pitt, sure, but I've never had trouble looking at myself in the mirror. Until tonight. The party was supposed to celebrate Harper's promotion at Nutriwell Consultancy, one of those sleek health and nutrition firms that sprouted up around Seattle like mushrooms after rain. The kind of place where everyone wore athleisure and spoke in buzzwords about optimizing human potential while charging desperate people $300 for meal plans they could find free online. Harper fit right in. At 34, she'd transformed herself from the quirky psychology major I'd married into this polished, Instagram-ready version of wellness perfection. Tonight, she wore a form-fitting black dress that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment. Her blonde hair styled in those beach waves that looked effortless, but took 2 hours to achieve. Roland's just so traditional, Harper continued, gesturing with her wine glass toward where I stood near the bar. He thinks success means getting dirt under your fingernails. Meanwhile, I'm building something real here. Desmond Rake nodded along, his perfectly groomed beard catching the string lights overhead. 33 years old, 6'2", the kind of guy who probably practiced his concerned face in the mirror. He worked with Harper, some kind of wellness influencer who'd parlayed a decent jawline and a psychology degree into a social media empire built on telling people their problems would disappear if they just bought the right supplements. Growth mindset versus fixed mindset, Desmond said, placing what I'm sure he thought was a supportive hand on Harper's shoulder. Some people evolve. Others get left behind. The crowd of Harper's coworkers murmured their agreement. I recognized most of them. Jessica, the marketing director with the fake laugh. Brad, the sales guy who measured his worth in quarterly numbers. Monica, Harper's closest friend at work, who'd never liked me from day one. I mean, look at him. Harper gestured again, and I felt every eye on the rooftop turn my way. Standing there in his Carhartt jacket at a networking event, it's like bringing a hammer to a wine tasting. More laughter. I took a long sip of my beer, some craft IPA that tasted like pine needles and cost $12, and let my gaze drift over the Seattle skyline. The Space Needle glowed in the distance, surrounded by the glass towers of Amazon and Microsoft, monuments to the kind of success Harper craved. Our condo sat somewhere in that maze of steel and ambition, a sterile 2-bedroom box that Harper had decorated in shades of white and gray. Everything clean lines and minimalism, nothing that suggested actual humans lived there. Certainly nothing that suggested I lived there. The thing is, Harper was saying, warming up to her theme, I deserve better. We all do. Life's too short to settle for mediocre. I'd heard enough. I finished my beer, set the bottle on the bar, and walked over to the group. Conversations faded as I approached, the kind of awkward silence that follows a social execution. Great party, honey, I said, my voice carrying just enough edge to let everyone know I'd heard every word. Really inspiring stuff about evolution and growth mindsets, very educational. Harper's cheeks flushed, but she didn't back down. If anything, the attention seemed to energize her. Roland, We were just discussing career trajectories. Planning for the future. Right. The future. I looked around the circle of faces, noting how they all avoided eye contact except for Desmond, who met my gaze with something that might have been pity. Well, I'll leave you to your planning. Got an early morning tomorrow. Some of us still work with our hands. I started to turn away, then stopped. Oh, and Desmond? Love the beard. Very authentic. Really sells the whole outdoorsy thing, even though I heard you needed GPS to find the parking garage. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the group. Desmond's jaw tightened, but he maintained his composure, professional to the end. Take care, Roland, he said. Drive safe. The ride home was silent. Harper stared out the passenger window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. Our condo building rose ahead of us, all sharp angles and floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of place that looked impressive in real estate photos, but felt like living in a display case. You embarrassed me tonight, Harper said, as we rode the elevator to the 15th floor. I embarrassed you? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's rich, coming from someone who just told a room full of people she doesn't want children with her ugly husband. I didn't say you were ugly. You implied it. And the part about having better options? What exactly did you mean by that? The elevator doors opened, and Harper stepped out without answering. Our condo stretched before us, all that expensive emptiness she'd curated. The living room furniture looked like it belonged in a museum, beautiful, untouchable, cold. I meant I have options, Harper said finally, kicking off her heels. Career options, growth opportunities, things you wouldn't understand because you're content to stay exactly where you are. Where I am is running a successful business that employs 12 people and just landed the Morrison Hotel renovation contract. But sure, let's call that stagnation. Harper disappeared into the bedroom, and I heard the shower start running. I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and sat on our pristine white couch, staring out at the city lights below. My phone buzzed. A text from Sam. How was the party? You look like someone pissed in your cornflakes. I'd apparently posted something on social media without realizing it. A photo of the Seattle skyline with the caption, "Great view from up here." The comments were already rolling in, mostly from Harper's friends, all variations of "so fun" and "amazing night." But there was one comment that caught my attention. From someone named Avar47. Beautiful view. Sometimes the higher you climb, the farther you can fall. I clicked on the profile. Ava Rake, Desmond's wife. In her profile photo, she looked nothing like the social media wives I was used to seeing in Harper's feed. No duck lips or carefully arranged lifestyle shots. Just a woman with kind eyes and a genuine smile, holding a golden retriever in what looked like a backyard garden. I scrolled through her posts, pictures of homemade bread, hiking trails, book recommendations, the kind of life Harper used to want, back when we'd spend weekends exploring the Olympic Peninsula instead of networking at rooftop bars. The shower was still running. I opened Harper's laptop. She'd left it on the kitchen counter, password protected, but I knew it by heart. Nutruel 2023. Her email was open. Nothing suspicious in the recent messages, just work stuff and promotional emails from various wellness brands. But something made me click on her text messages, which synced automatically with her laptop. That's when I found them. Messages with Desmond going back 3 months, not just work stuff. Personal conversations, inside jokes, complaints about their respective spouses, and then, buried deeper, the kind of messages that made my bourbon taste like battery acid. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Roland's working late again. Room 412, I'll be waiting. You make me feel alive in ways I'd forgotten. And the most recent one, sent just 2 hours ago. After tonight, I think he knows something. We need to be more careful. I closed the laptop and finished my bourbon. The shower had stopped running, and I could hear Harper moving around the bedroom, probably going through her nighttime routine, the expensive creams and serums that promised to stop time in its tracks. My phone buzzed again. Sam, Seriously, you look awful. Want to hit the gym tomorrow? Beat the shit out of something that can't sue you? I typed back, yeah, I could use the workout. But as I sat there in our sterile living room, looking out at the city where my wife was building her new life without me, I realized I didn't want to hit a punching bag. I wanted to hit back. The Morrison Hotel renovation site was a mess of mud, scaffolding, and the kind of honest chaos that came from building something real. I stood in what would eventually be the lobby, watching my crew install the irrigation system for the living wall we'd designed. 12 feet of native Pacific Northwest plants that would clean the air and give hotel guests something actual to look at instead of generic artwork. "Looking good, boss," called out Martinez, my foreman. He'd been with me since I started the company, back when we worked out of my garage and every job was a gamble. "Should have the whole system online by Friday." I nodded, but my mind wasn't on the work. It had been 3 days since the party, 3 days since I'd discovered Harper's text messages, and I hadn't said a word. Instead, I'd been watching, learning, planning. Harper had no idea I knew. She went about her routine, morning smoothie, yoga video in the living room, off to work by 8:30, while I pretended everything was normal. But I was documenting everything now. Screenshots of her messages, photos of her credit card statements, a detailed log of her lies. "You're distracted today," said a voice behind me. I turned to find Sam Patel approaching, his work boots crunching on the gravel. Sam ran a small landscaping crew and often subcontracted with us on bigger jobs. He was also my oldest friend, dating back to our college boxing days, and the only person who could read my moods like a book. "Just thinking," I said. "About Harper?" Sam had never been a fan of my wife, though he'd been diplomatic about it over the years, but there was something in his tone now that suggested his patience with diplomacy was wearing thin. "What makes you say that?" "Because you've been checking your phone every 5 minutes, and you look like someone who hasn't slept in a week." Sam crossed his arms. "Plus, Jessica Martinez told my wife she saw Harper at Belltown Towers yesterday afternoon. Apparently she was getting real cozy with some guy in the lobby." Belltown Towers. Luxury condos downtown. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Jessica could have been mistaken. Could have been. Sam studied my face. But she wasn't, was she? I didn't answer directly. Instead, I pulled out my phone and showed him a screenshot of Harper's most recent message to Desmond. "Same time tomorrow? I bought something special for the occasion." Sam read it twice, then handed the phone back. "Shit, Roland. I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. Be helpful. You still know people who can do background checks? You thinking of hiring a private investigator?" "I'm thinking of getting my facts straight before I make any moves." I looked around the construction site at the honest work being done by people who showed up every day and did what they said they'd do. Harper thinks I'm just some dumb contractor who doesn't understand her sophisticated world. Maybe it's time to show her what this dumb contractor is capable of. Sam was quiet for a moment. "You want my advice?" "Always. Don't do anything stupid. Don't do anything illegal. And don't do anything you can't live with afterward." He paused. "But if you're going to hit back smart. Use your head, not your fists." That afternoon, I drove to Belltown Towers. It was the kind of building Harper aspired to live in, all glass and steel, with a doorman and valet parking. The lobby was marble and chrome, designed to intimidate anyone who didn't belong. I didn't belong, but I'd learned a few things about confidence during my boxing days. Walk like you own the place, and most people will assume you do. "Excuse me," I said to the concierge, a young guy in a suit that probably cost more than most people's rent. "I'm supposed to meet Desmond Rake, but I think I'm early. Has he come down yet?" The concierge checked his computer. "Mr. Rake is still upstairs, sir. Would you like me to call up?" "No, that's fine. I'll wait." I settled into one of the leather chairs with a view of the elevators and pulled out my phone, pretending to read emails while I watched the lobby. I didn't have to wait long. At 3:47 p.m., the elevator doors opened and Harper stepped out, followed by Desmond. They weren't touching, but there was an intimacy in the way they moved together, the way Harper tilted her head when Desmond whispered something in her ear. I took photos. Not great ones. I was too far away and trying to be subtle, but clear enough to show who was there and when. They separated at the entrance. Harper headed toward the parking garage while Desmond walked to the street. I followed Harper, staying far enough back to avoid detection. She got into her white BMW, the one I'd helped her pick out last year, and sat there for several minutes, typing on her phone. My phone buzzed, a text from Harper. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." I took a screenshot, noting the timestamp, 3:52 p.m. 5 minutes after she'd left her lover's apartment. The next few days fell into a routine. Harper would leave for work, claiming meetings and client calls that kept her busy until evening. I'd track her movements when I could, building a timeline of lies, and in the evenings we'd sit in our sterile condo, making small talk while she texted her boyfriend and I documented her deception. "How was your day?" she'd ask, not looking up from her phone. "Good, busy. Morrison project is coming along." I'd pause. "How was yours? You mentioned a client meeting." "Oh, you know, same old stuff. Wellness plans, nutrition consultations." She'd finally look up, offering the kind of smile she probably practiced in the mirror. Nothing you'd find interesting. But I was finding it very interesting, especially when I cross-referenced her claimed meetings with her actual location data, which I could access through our shared Apple account. While she was supposedly consulting with clients, she was actually at Desmond's apartment, or meeting him at hotels, or shopping for the kind of lingerie she never wore at home anymore. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening. I was reviewing the photos I'd taken outside Belltown Towers when Harper emerged from the bedroom wearing a black dress I'd never seen before. "Going somewhere?" I asked. "Work event. Networking thing downtown." She was applying lipstick in the hallway mirror, the kind of deep red she used to wear on our anniversary dinners. "Probably be late." "Which client?" "What?" "Which client is hosting the event?" Harper paused, lipstick halfway to her mouth. "It's not for a specific client. It's industry-wide. Wellness professionals, potential partnerships, that kind of thing." "Sounds important. Mind if I come along? I could use some networking." "Roland, you'd be bored out of your mind. It's all nutrition science and market trends." "I might surprise you. I'm more sophisticated than you think." Something flickered across Harper's face. Annoyance, maybe, or fear. "It's really not your scene. Besides, you hate these kinds of events." She was right. I did hate them, but I hated being lied to more. "Okay," I said. "Have fun. Drive safe." Harper kissed my cheek, a brief, perfunctory gesture, and left. I waited 10 minutes, then followed. She didn't go downtown. Instead, she drove to Desmond's building, parked in the visitor section, and disappeared inside. I sat in my truck across the street, engine running, watching the windows of his apartment light up on the 14th floor. My phone buzzed. A text from Harper. "Event is boring but good for business. Love you." I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, "Love you too." But as I sat there in the dark, watching my wife's silhouette move past Desmond's windows, I realized I was lying too. Whatever love I'd felt for Harper was fading, eliminated by 1,000 small betrayals and one big one. What was growing in its place was something colder, harder, and infinitely more dangerous. It was time to start planning my revenge. I found Ava Rake at Pike Place Market on a Saturday morning, browsing the flower stalls with the kind of unhurried attention that suggested she actually cared about what she was buying. She looked exactly like her social media photos, genuine, unguarded, the kind of person who probably still believed in things like marriage vows and honesty. "Excuse me," I said, approaching carefully. You're Ava, right? Desmond's wife? She turned, and I saw recognition flicker in her eyes. You're Roland, Harper's husband. Guilty as charged. I gestured toward the flowers she'd been examining. Those are beautiful. Peonies? Garden roses, actually. They're for my mother's birthday. She studied my face. You don't look like someone who's here for the flowers. Smart woman. I liked her already. Could we talk? Maybe grab coffee? Ava was quiet for a moment, then nodded. There's a place around the corner. Quiet. The coffee shop was one of those authentic Seattle institutions. Worn wooden floors, mismatched chairs, and coffee that actually tasted like coffee instead of dessert. We found a table in the back corner, away from the morning rush. So, Ava said, wrapping her hands around her mug. How long have you known? About 3 weeks. You? 6 months. She took a sip of her coffee. Maybe longer. I kept telling myself I was being paranoid, but you weren't. No, I wasn't. Ava looked out the window at the market crowds. He's done this before. Other women, other affairs. I always forgave him, thought he'd change. What's different this time? This time feels serious. He's never been this careless before, never flaunted it like this. She turned back to me. Your wife is very beautiful. So are you. Ava smiled, but there was sadness in it. Thank you. But I'm not 25 anymore, and I don't have Harper's ambition. Ambition. That's one word for it. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, two people who'd been betrayed by the same lie. Finally, Ava spoke. What are you going to do? I'm still figuring that out. What about you? I've already filed for divorce. My lawyer says I have a strong case. Infidelity, financial misconduct, emotional abandonment. She paused. Desmond doesn't know yet. I wanted to gather evidence first. Financial misconduct? He's been using our joint accounts to pay for hotels, gifts, dinners with other women, including your wife. Ava reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. Bank statements, credit card records, receipts. My lawyer says it's textbook marital asset dissipation. I looked through the documents. Hotel charges at the Fairmont, expensive dinners at restaurants I couldn't afford, jewelry purchases from stores Harper had never mentioned shopping at. The financial trail of an affair, documented in black and white. This is very thorough, I said. I'm a paralegal. Was a paralegal, before I married Desmond, and he convinced me to stay home. Ava's voice carried a hint of bitterness. Turns out those skills come in handy when your husband is a cheating bastard. Would you be willing to share some of this, for my own divorce proceedings? Of course, we're in this together, whether we like it or not. I finished my coffee and made a decision. Ava, what would you say to making them pay for this? Not just financially, but publicly, professionally. What do you mean? I mean, Harper and Desmond think they're so much smarter than us. They think we're just the boring spouses they've outgrown. Maybe it's time to show them what boring spouses are capable of when they put their minds to it. Ava studied my face. That sounds like revenge. It is revenge, but it's also justice. What did you have in mind? I told her. By the time we left the coffee shop, we had a plan. It wasn't elaborate. The best revenge never is. It was simple, methodical, and designed to hit Harper and Desmond where it would hurt most, their precious reputations. The first phase began immediately. I started documenting everything with the kind of obsessive detail I usually reserved for landscape blueprints. Photos, timestamps, financial records, saved text messages. I created a digital dossier that would make any private investigator proud. Harper made it easy. She'd grown careless, confident in her deception. She'd leave her phone unlocked on the kitchen counter while she showered. She'd forget to delete browser histories showing hotel bookings and lingerie purchases. She'd tell me she was working late, then post Instagram stories from expensive restaurants where she was clearly on a date. You're different lately, she said one evening, looking up from her phone. We were sitting on our couch, the space between us feeling like an ocean. Different how? I don't know. Distant, distracted. She set her phone aside, a rare gesture that would have meant something 3 months ago. Is everything okay with work? Work's fine. Morrison project is ahead of schedule. That's good. She moved closer, placing her hand on my arm. I know I've been busy lately, but things should calm down soon. Maybe we could plan a weekend getaway? Somewhere romantic? I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. The woman I'd married had been spontaneous, genuine, a little messy around the edges. This version of Harper was polished, calculated, performing even in our own living room. Sure, I said, that sounds nice. But I was already thinking about phase 2 of the plan. The next day, I called Harper's office. Nutriwell Consultancy, this is Jessica speaking. Hi, Jessica. This is Roland Kellman, Harper's husband. I'm planning a surprise for her, and I was hoping you could help me out. Oh, how sweet. What kind of surprise? I want to send flowers to her biggest client this month, thank them for keeping her so busy. But I want to make sure I get the right company. She's been working late almost every night. There was a pause. Roland, Harper hasn't had any major client meetings this month. Most of her work has been internal. Strategy sessions with Desmond, planning for the Wellness Expo next month. Strategy sessions? Yeah, they've been putting in a lot of hours on the new corporate wellness package, really burning the midnight oil. I thanked Jessica and hung up, adding another lie to my growing collection. Harper wasn't working late with clients. She was working late with Desmond, and their colleagues either didn't know or didn't care that both of them were married to other people. That afternoon, I drove to Nutriwell's office building. It was one of those converted warehouses in the Sodo district, all exposed brick and industrial chic. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the open office layout, standing desks, motivational posters, and a juice bar that probably cost more to maintain than most people's salaries. I didn't go inside. Instead, I parked across the street and waited. At 6:30 p.m., Harper and Desmond emerged together. They walked to the parking garage, talking intently, and I followed at a distance. They got into separate cars but drove in the same direction, toward Belltown. I already knew where they were going. This time, I didn't just watch from the lobby. I'd done my homework, learned that Desmond's building had a rooftop deck that was accessible to residents and their guests. I'd also learned that the building's security was more for show than substance. Lots of cameras, but no one actually monitoring them during dinner hours. Getting to the roof wasn't hard. The real trick was positioning myself where I could see into Desmond's apartment without being seen myself. What I saw through his floor-to-ceiling windows made my stomach turn. Harper and Desmond weren't just having an affair. They were playing house. Harper was cooking dinner in his kitchen, wearing one of his shirts like she lived there. They moved around each other with the kind of easy intimacy that comes from practice, from routine, from love. I took photos until my phone's memory was full, then sat on the rooftop in the growing darkness, looking out at the Seattle skyline and thinking about the life I'd built with a woman who was already building a new one without me. My phone buzzed. A text from Harper. Client dinner running late. Don't wait up. Love you. I looked down at Desmond's apartment, where my wife was washing dishes in another man's kitchen, and typed back, love you too. But this time, I added a photo, a shot of the Seattle skyline from the rooftop, with the timestamp clearly visible. Harper's response came immediately. Beautiful view. Where are you? Morrison Hotel rooftop, checking on the installation. It was a lie, but it was my lie. And unlike Harper's lies, mine had a purpose. Phase 3 was about to begin. The Nutriwell Wellness Expo was exactly the kind of event Harper lived for. Hundreds of health-conscious professionals networking under the harsh fluorescent lights of the Seattle Convention Center, everyone trying to out-wellness each other with their kombucha and activated charcoal smoothies. I wasn't supposed to be there. Harper had made that clear when she'd mentioned the event in passing, dismissing it as industry stuff that would bore me to tears. But I'd bought a ticket anyway, registered under my company name as a potential corporate wellness client. Roland? Harper's voice cracked like a whip across the convention floor. What are you doing here? She was working the Nutriwell booth with Desmond, both of them wearing matching company polo shirts, and the kind of aggressively friendly smiles that screamed sales professionals. Seeing them together in their natural habitat, predators hunting in a pack, crystallized something for me. Surprise, I said, holding up my visitor badge. Thought I'd check out what all the fuss is about. Maybe learn something about optimizing human potential. Desmond stepped forward, extending his hand like we were old friends meeting at a barbecue instead of two men whose wives were sleeping together. Roland, great to see you, man. Harper didn't mention you were interested in corporate wellness. Harper doesn't mention a lot of things. I shook his hand, noting the soft palm and manicured nails. Nice firm handshake, Desmond. You work out? When I can find the time. Busy schedule, you know how it is. I do. Harper's been telling me all about your late-night strategy sessions. Something flickered across Desmond's face, but his smile never wavered. We've been putting together some exciting new packages, really innovative stuff. I bet. I turned to Harper, who was looking like she'd rather be anywhere else on Earth. So this is where you've been spending all those evenings. Impressive setup. Roland, maybe we could talk later. I'm working right now. Of course. Don't let me interrupt. I gestured around the convention floor. Mind if I browse? Might learn something about growth mindsets and evolution. Harper's face went pale. She remembered her words from the rooftop party, the casual cruelty she'd delivered for Desmond's entertainment. Actually, I continued, I ran into an old friend of yours yesterday. Monica from your office? She mentioned how much time you and Desmond have been spending together. Said you two make quite a team. That was a lie. I hadn't talked to Monica, but the way Harper and Desmond exchanged glances told me everything I needed to know about office gossip and how carefully they'd been trying to manage it. We work well together, Desmond said carefully. Complementary skill sets. I'm sure you complement each other beautifully. I smiled, letting just enough edge creep into my voice to make them both uncomfortable. Well, I should let you get back to optimizing human potential. Harper, I'll see you at home, assuming you're coming home tonight. I walked away before either of them could respond, but I could feel their eyes following me across the convention floor. Phase 4 was officially in motion. The real confrontation came 3 days later at Sam's boxing gym in Georgetown. It was a no-frills place that smelled like sweat and honest work. Heavy bags hanging from the ceiling, speed bags rattling against their platforms, the sound of leather hitting leather echoing off concrete walls. I was working the heavy bag when they walked in. Roland, Desmond called out. We need to talk. I finished my combination, jab, cross, hook, uppercut, before turning around. Desmond looked out of place in his designer jeans and button-down shirt, like a tourist who'd wandered into the wrong neighborhood. Harper stood behind him, arms crossed, wearing the kind of athleisure outfit that cost more than most people's gym memberships. Interesting choice of venue, I said, pulling off my gloves. Little outside your usual territory, isn't it? We wanted privacy, Harper said. Somewhere we could talk without interruption. How thoughtful. Sam, you mind giving us some space? Sam looked up from where he was working with a young fighter on footwork. He'd been my training partner for 15 years, and he could read the situation as clearly as I could. Take your time, he said. I'll be right over here if you need anything. The emphasis on anything wasn't lost on anyone. So, I said, grabbing a towel and wiping sweat from my face, what's so important that you had to track me down at the gym? We know what you're doing, Desmond said. The photos, the surveillance, showing up at Harper's work events. I went to one wellness expo, hardly surveillance. You've been following us, Harper said. Taking pictures, asking questions about our work schedules. Have I? That's a serious accusation. I draped the towel around my neck and leaned against the heavy bag. Got any proof? Desmond stepped closer, trying to use his height advantage to intimidate me. It might have worked on someone who hadn't spent years getting punched in the face by people who hit a lot harder than he ever could. Look, Roland, I get it. You're upset. But this thing between Harper and me, this relationship, it's not something we planned. It just happened. Right. You just accidentally fell into bed together, multiple times, at multiple hotels, using your joint credit card with Ava to pay for it. That stopped him cold. Harper's face went white. How do you, she started, know about the credit card? About the Fairmont? About the lingerie you bought at Nordstrom last Tuesday? I smiled. Turns out your husband's wife is a paralegal, Harper. Was a paralegal. Very thorough with financial records. You talked to Ava? Desmond's composure was starting to crack. We've become quite close, actually. Bonded over our shared experience of being married to cheating liars. I pushed off from the heavy bag and took a step toward them. Did you know she's filing for divorce? Taking half your assets, plus alimony, plus she gets the house because you used marital funds to finance your affair? Desmond's face went red. You snake. Careful, Desmond. We're in a boxing gym. Things can get physical real quick in a place like this. Is that a threat? It's a statement of fact, but don't worry. I'm not going to hit you. That would be assault, and I'm not stupid enough to give you grounds for a restraining order. I paused. Besides, I don't need to hit you. You're doing a fine job of destroying your own life. Harper found her voice. Roland, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling, figure out how to move forward. Move forward? I laughed, and there was no humor in it. Harper, you told a room full of people you didn't want children with your ugly husband because you had better options. You've been lying to me for months, spending our money on another man, planning a future that doesn't include me. What exactly are we supposed to work out? I was drunk. I didn't mean... You meant every word. And you know what? You were right. You do deserve better than me. Unfortunately for you, Desmond isn't better. He's just different. I looked at Desmond, who was still trying to process the news about his impending divorce. Tell me, Des, can I call you Des? What's your plan here? You're about to lose half your assets to Ava, your reputation at work is going to take a hit when this comes out, and you're planning to start over with a woman who cheated on her husband. Think that's going to end well for you? Shut up, he said. Or what? You'll hit me? I gestured around the gym. Go ahead. I could use the practice. Sam had moved closer, ostensibly to work a speed bag, but really to make sure things didn't get out of hand. A few other fighters had stopped their workouts to watch the show. This isn't over, Desmond said. You're right, it's not. I picked up my gym bag. But when it is over, you're both going to wish you'd been smarter about how you handled it. I started to walk away, then stopped and turned back. Oh, and Harper? You might want to check your employment contract. I'm pretty sure Nutriwell has a morality clause about relationships between coworkers, especially when both parties are married to other people. The look of panic that crossed her face was worth every sleepless night I'd spent planning this moment. See you at home, I said. If you decide to come home. As I walked out of the gym, I could hear them arguing behind me. Harsh whispers and accusations, the sound of a conspiracy falling apart under pressure. Phase 5 was going to be the most satisfying yet. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning at 9:47 a.m., sent to every employee at Nutriwell Consultancy from an anonymous Gmail account. The subject line read, regarding professional conduct and company values. I wasn't the one who sent it. That honor belonged to Ava, who'd proven to be remarkably creative when it came to digital warfare. But I was the one who'd provided the photos, the timeline, and the financial records that made up the email's devastating attachments. The message itself was brief and professional. To whom it may concern, please find attached documentation regarding the ongoing extramarital relationship between employees Harper Kellman and Desmond Rake, including evidence of company time and resources being used to facilitate their affair. As Nutriwell prides itself on integrity and family values, I felt this information should be brought to management's attention. A concerned party. By 10:15 a.m., Harper was calling me from the Nutriwell parking lot, her voice shaking with rage and panic. "What did you do?" "Good morning to you too, honey. How's work going?" "Don't play dumb, Roland. I know this was you." "I'm not sure what you're talking about. I'm at the Morrison Hotel, supervising the final installation of the living wall. Beautiful work, if I do say so myself. Very satisfying to see a project come together. The email, Roland, the photos, She lowered her voice. "Everyone knows. The whole office is talking about it. That's unfortunate. Workplace gossip can be so destructive. I'm suspended pending investigation. They're calling it a violation of company policy. Sleeping with a married coworker on company time probably is against policy. Most places frown on that kind of thing." There was a long silence. When Harper spoke again, her voice was different. Smaller, more vulnerable than I'd heard it in months. "Why are you doing this to me?" "I'm not doing anything to you, Harper. I'm just making sure the truth comes out. You're the one who chose to have an affair. You're the one who lied, who cheated, who humiliated me in public. I'm just documenting the consequences. This will ruin my career. Maybe, or maybe it'll teach you something about accountability." Another silence. Then, "What do you want?" "I want a divorce. I want you out of the condo by the end of the week. And I want you to stop pretending you're the victim here." "Roland, I have to go, Harper. The living wall won't install itself." I hung up and went back to work, but I couldn't concentrate. Part of me, a smaller part than I'd expected, felt bad about what was happening to Harper. But a larger part felt something I hadn't experienced in months: relief. The truth was finally out. That evening, I met Ava at a wine bar in Capitol Hill. She looked different than she had at Pike Place Market, more confident, like she'd shed a weight she'd been carrying for years. "How's Desmond handling the news?" I asked. "About as well as you'd expect. He's been calling and texting all day, alternating between apologies and threats." She took a sip of her wine. "His lawyer called my lawyer. Apparently, he wants to negotiate." "What kind of negotiation?" "The kind where he keeps more of his assets and I keep quiet about the affair." Ava smiled. "I told my lawyer to counter with an offer where he keeps less of his assets and I still don't keep quiet." "I like your style. I learned from the best. This whole anonymous email thing was brilliant, by the way. Much more effective than anything I could have done legally. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire." We sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd been through hell and come out the other side. Around us, the wine bar buzzed with the conversations of people whose biggest problems were probably choosing between the salmon and the chicken. "What's next for you?" Ava asked. "Finish the Morrison project, grow the business, maybe travel a little. I haven't taken a real vacation in years." I paused. "What about you?" "I'm thinking of going back to work. Maybe start my own paralegal service, help other people navigate divorces." She smiled. "Turns out I have a talent for it." "I bet you do." My phone buzzed. A text from Sam. "Turn on channel 7. You're going to want to see this." I showed Ava the message, and she pulled up the news app on her phone. The story was buried in the local business section, but the headline made both of us smile. "Local wellness company under investigation for ethics violations." The article was brief but damning. Nutriwell was facing questions about its hiring practices, workplace culture, and management oversight after allegations of inappropriate conduct between employees. The company's stock price, it had gone public the year before, had dropped 12% in after-hours trading. Think they'll fire them? Ava asked. Harper, probably. She's lower on the food chain, easier to sacrifice. I thought about Desmond, with his polished presentation and social media following. Desmond might survive, but his reputation is shot. Hard to be a wellness influencer when everyone knows you're a cheating husband. Good. We finished our wine and walked out into the Seattle evening. The city looked different to me now, not the backdrop for Harper's ambitions, but just a place where people lived and worked and tried to build something meaningful. Roland, Ava said as we reached our cars. Thank you. For everything. I couldn't have done this alone. Yes, you could have. You just didn't have to. The final confrontation came 3 days later at our condo. I was packing Harper's belongings. She'd been staying at a hotel since the suspension, when she walked in using her key. We need to talk, she said. She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her usually perfect makeup was smudged, and she was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt I'd never seen before. This was Harper without the performance, without the carefully constructed image. I thought you were staying at the Marriott. I am. I just needed to get some things. She looked around the condo like she was seeing it for the first time. And I wanted to apologize. For which part? The affair, the lies, or calling me ugly in front of your friends? All of it. She sat down on the couch, in the same spot where she'd planned her deception, while I sat 3 feet away, oblivious. I know you won't believe this, but I never meant for it to go this far. How far did you mean for it to go? I don't know. I was unhappy, Roland. I felt stuck, like my life was smaller than I wanted it to be. She looked up at me. You were so content with everything, the business, the condo, our routine. I wanted more. So you decided to have an affair. I decided to feel alive again. Desmond made me feel like I was special, like I was worth something. You were worth something. To me. But not to myself. Harper wiped her eyes. I know that's not an excuse. I know I handled everything wrong. But I need you to understand that it wasn't about you. It was about me. I sat down across from her, studying the woman I'd been married to for 8 years. She was right. I had been content. Maybe too content. Maybe I'd stopped seeing her as a person and started seeing her as a fixture in the life I'd built. But that didn't excuse what she'd done. Harper, even if I could forgive the affair, I can't forgive the cruelty. The way you talked about me at that party, the way you made me feel like I was something to be ashamed of. I paused. That wasn't about feeling alive. That was about feeling superior. She was crying now, and part of me wanted to comfort her, but that part was smaller than it used to be. What happens now? She asked. Now you sign the divorce papers. You find a new place to live. You figure out what you want to do with your life now that Nutriwell is probably going to fire you. And us? There is no us, Harper. There hasn't been for months. We were just too stubborn to admit it. She nodded, accepting what we both knew was true. For what it's worth, I am sorry. And I hope someday you can forgive me. Maybe someday I will, but not today. Harper gathered the rest of her things and left. I stood at the window, watching her load boxes into her BMW in the parking lot below. When she was done, she looked up at the window where I was standing and raised her hand in a small wave. I didn't wave back. 6 months later, I was having dinner with Ava at a restaurant overlooking Elliott Bay. We'd been seeing each other for 3 months. Nothing serious, just 2 people who understood each other's damage and were taking things slow. Harper called me yesterday, I said. Really? What did she want? To tell me she's moving to Portland, got a job with a smaller wellness company starting over. How do you feel about that? Relieved, mostly. It'll be easier not to run into her at the grocery store. I took a sip of wine. She also said Desmond is getting remarried, some Instagram model he met at a fitness conference. That was fast. Some people never learn. Ava reached across the table and took my hand. Some people do. I squeezed her hand and looked out at the water, where ferries moved like slow-motion dancers across the darkening bay. The city lights were coming on, each one representing someone's life, someone's dreams, someone's struggles. My phone buzzed. A text from Sam. Morrison Project won an award. Architectural Digest wants to do a feature. Told you that living wall was special. I showed Ava the message, and she smiled. Congratulations. You deserve it. We all deserve good things, I said. The trick is recognizing them when they come along. As we walked back to our cars, I thought about the man I'd been a year ago, angry, betrayed, focused on revenge. That man had gotten his justice, had made Harper and Desmond pay for their betrayal. But somewhere in the process of destroying their lies, I'd also built something new. Not just a relationship with Ava, though that was part of it, but a relationship with myself, with the truth of who I was when I wasn't trying to be what someone else wanted. Harper had been wrong about one thing. I wasn't ugly. I was just honest. And in a world full of beautiful lies, honesty was revolutionary. My name is Roland Kellman. I'm 37 years old. I build living things in concrete jungles, and I'm finally learning what it means to be content with who I am instead of what other people think I should be. The joke, as it turns out, was never on me.